It's another beautiful Thursday morning above ground. We are going to be having a very interesting conversation this morning, and we have a very special guest who's going to be. I have my own fibroid story. So we are jumping into fibroids. We're talking all about fibroids this morning. And there he is. We are joined this morning by a very special guest all the way in the United States of America. Atlanta, to be exact. You're in Atlanta now, Dr. Lippman.
How are you? Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for making time for doing this. This is Dr. John Lippman. And as a matter of fact, he sent me a bio with a lot of very important information. But I thought, you know what? Since he's here, he can just give us the nice short version of what it is that he does in a nutshell, because we really want to spend most of the time today trying to get as much information as possible out of him, because we want to talk about non-surgical treatment options for fibroids. So I'm just going to let you go ahead and tell us a little bit about, your background and what exactly is it that you do on a day-to-day basis.
Well, I'm the founder and medical director of the Atlanta Fibroid Center here in Atlanta, Georgia, in the United States. I've been practicing for the past 30 years, 25 of which have been involved in the non-surgical treatment for uterine fibroids. So that's what we do every single day. We're the leaders worldwide in a procedure that completely replaces the need for any surgery for women that are suffering with fibroids. And that procedure is called uterine.
Oh, no, hold on. I want to talk about the procedure. Hold on. I just want to take a minute just to give everybody a chance to come in the room and get acquainted and get everybody who you need to get ready, and just a little bit of background on fibroids and what fibroids are about and how they affect our lives, because it's a daily struggle. I've personally struggled with fibroids. I'm still struggling with. Well, I'm not struggling so much because I'm not feeling so much pain anymore. I'm going to talk about a lot of that and what I've done. And we want to know what you have to bring to the table as well, Dr. Lippman, because as you are aware, I don't know if it is that, and maybe you can answer this for me. Would you say that women are now having more instances of fibroids, or is it that we are now able to see it more because it's being diagnosed more? Because I realize, especially in the last at least 20 years, I don't come across any woman who either don't have it or don't know somebody immediately in their circle who has it. So is it that it's more cases, or is it that it's being diagnosed more? What do you think?
Well, I think it's both. I think clearly, while nobody knows where fibroids come from, they grow with estrogen, hormones. And hormones, as you know, are just pervasive throughout the food supply. They're even in the water. So where people are getting exposed to hormones more frequently. You can see it in our children. They're getting their periods earlier, younger ages. They're more developed. So you can see the effects of hormones. So it's more common. We're seeing it more often. And also we're able to detect these things with better imaging and more information, more knowledge. People are seeking out these non-surgical approaches. So it's both.
Okay, perfect. All right, so let's jump right into the treatment conversation then. What I was told when I was diagnosed off the board, I was told about surgery. I had to go and do research to find out about other things. My diagnosis was in 2014. Okay. And I've since changed my relationship with food. I've completely overhauled my lifestyle, and that is what I've been doing to treat my fibroids. But I know that there are other things that you're going to tell us about. What I want you to basically just get us very clear on is how all of that connects, how our lifestyle connects to how the improvement or even the worsening of the symptoms where fibroids are concerned.
Sure. So fibroids are benign tumors. They're not cancer. That's important to understand. They're benign, but they can have really significant horrible symptoms. It's the #1 reason why women have heavy periods. So that's the most common presenting symptom, is these heavy periods, and we can talk about that. But you're right. We start, when we see a patient that comes into our office with symptoms from fibroids, we get imaging of her pelvis to see these fibroids. But where the treatment begins is in lifestyle stuff. All the stuff that you're doing, it's helpful. As I mentioned, fibroids grow with estrogen. So our initial approach is we want to kind of be anti-estrogen. So we want to first do, estrogen is stored in fat. And so one of the reasons why women of color disproportionately suffer with fibroids over other racial groups is they in general have more body fat. So we like to start there. If you can exercise and try to, everybody has kind of an ideal body weight for their frame. You don't have to be skinny, but everybody has their ideal weight, and they usually know what that is. So we try to get them to at least start their journey to get towards their ideal weight, because if they can lose excess body fat, that will improve their symptoms significantly. We also try to avoid estrogenic foods, if you will. So red meat, non-organic or non-free range chicken, dairy, some of these that have, hormone-rich foods, we want to try to limit those if we can, and then boost up the anti-estrogenic foods. There are in like colored fruits and vegetables, for instance, increasing those because colored fruits and vegetables have flavonoids in them, and flavonoids block an important enzyme in estrogen production. Vitamin D is really important. We check their vitamin D levels because vitamin D is kind of your anti-fibroid vitamin, if you will. It will retard fibroid growth. Again, one of the reasons why women of color disproportionately suffer is that they have typically low vitamin D levels.
Oh, wow.
If you have a low vitamin D, you are much more likely to suffer with fibroids. In fact, there was a study here in the United States at the NIH that looked at over 1,000 women that were suffering with fibroids. Only 10% of them had adequate vitamin D levels. And when you start supplementing them, you can improve their symptoms and you can kind of growth retardant. How we get vitamin D into our bodies is through sunlight. And if you have a darker pigmented skin, it's harder to get adequate vitamin D than those that are fair skinned. So lifestyle with, trying to be anti-estrogen, we want to supplement with vitamin D, exercise, eating well. Not only will it be good for your fibroid health, it'll improve your overall vascular health. So that's kind of where we start. And if a lot of women can improve their symptoms very nicely with that approach, but if we need to do something more, the past, it meant somebody was getting operated on, and we want to avoid surgery. Because even for women that are family complete, because I hear this all the time, well, my gynecologist told me because I'm not interested in any more children, I should just have my uterus out. That's
that is a standard. Like right now, because I was avoiding a hysterectomy, which is why I took the route that I took, because I was dreading this idea of being thrown into early menopause, because I know that my uterus is not just about childbearing. I know that is very important as it relates to regulating my hormones. So I was dreading that. So that I was actually avoiding a hysterectomy. But I've been talking to women this is 5 years now since I've been doing this work, and I'm talking to women 28 who has already done a hysterectomy. And I'm like, 28?
Horrible. The average age of hysterectomy in this country is 39, and as you know, I've seen so many women under 30 have already had a hysterectomy. They didn't want it, but they were told that was their only option. They were never told about this UFE option that I provide. And it's really disheartening because while I understand women can get worn down with these horrible symptoms. They get tired, they're anemic, they're fatigued, and they just kind of
bleeding. The heavy bleeding is really. I personally, I used to walk with plastic bags to put on chairs because I used to actually bleed through my clothes and mess up chairs, and I still see it today. A lot of women suffer with that. So,
Yes.
you know, it is really very, 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 you know, it preys on our life, and it really affects our quality of life. It's very difficult. Fibroids really wreak havoc on our life for real. Yeah.
It's a terrible, for women that are suffering with fibroids, as you mentioned, they're just bleeding so excessively. It's very draining. With all the loss that they're losing, they lose iron and hemoglobin also. So now they're weak, they're tired, they're fatigued. They might get migraine-like headaches. They might chew or crave ice. That's a common symptom. They get lightheaded, dizzy, brain fog. They're not cloudy thinking, migraine headaches. But it doesn't have to be. There's over 1 million women in the United States we call the silent sufferers. They're sitting on the sidelines suffering with this horrible, heavy period every month because they've been told their only option is hysterectomy, and they don't want that, and I don't blame them. So they just suffer in silence. They don't know anything about UFE, and UFE is one of the biggest medical breakthroughs.
Let's talk about UFE because I've been trying to find somebody here that does the procedure. I'm actually talking to some of my colleagues who are gynecologists, and they're actually researching on the procedure as well. So break down UFE for us and tell us exactly how does it work and how does it compare to having a hysterectomy or even a myomectomy.
It's a dramatically different procedure. It's not surgical at all. So patients that come to our center will come in the morning. The procedure takes me about 30 minutes to perform. The patient is asleep, but they're not put to sleep. The sedation is IV and local, so no general anesthesia. Go into each uterine artery separately with a very tiny catheter, it's like a piece of spaghetti. And I can get into each uterine artery separately from a one-sided approach. So we go in basically at just where the crease of the right leg, at the top of their right leg, at the crease of the undergarment. If you push down in that kind of right groin area, you can feel your pulse. That's where we go in with a little tiny catheter. And then we negotiate it into each uterine artery separately, and each uterine artery branches like a tree, getting smaller and smaller branches till you get out to the fibroids. They're the leaves of the tree. I know what size those tiny branches are, and I can plug them up with these little tiny particles. So these particles only go to the fibroids, and they stop the blood flow to these fibroids. Without a blood supply, the fibroids die, and they will start to soften and shrink, going from like grapes to raisins. And as that happens over days to weeks, the woman's symptoms start to go away. So, and after the procedure, say, takes 30 minutes or so, and then I'm done, I pull the catheter out, and I literally put a Band-Aid where I went in, at the top of her leg, a Band-Aid. And she goes home not only with her uterus, but with just a Band-Aid. That's it.
I was reading about it, and like the way you explained it sounds so simple, but I was actually reading about UFE, and I'm like, wow. So, and how long does it take before you start to see the difference in the size of the fibroid after the surgery?
Yeah, procedure. We don't do surgery.
Sorry, apologize. Procedure.
No, just kidding. There's about a 5 or 6 day recovery at home. So back to work at a week. And then I see them in the office 3 months after the procedure. By then, all the fibroids should be dead, and their symptoms should be dramatically better. They're transformed. They're brand new.
Oh my gosh!
Because now, instead of them, before they're running a deficit of iron and hemoglobin. They're weak. They're horrible pains. Now that they're not bleeding abnormally heavy anymore, it's a light, normal period. They can build up their iron and hemoglobin. They have this energy they haven't seen in months or years. Their period is normal. They don't have to worry about everything revolving around their period, their schedule,
Wow.
work or not, whether they go to the beach or not, whether they have sexual relations or not. Everything is revolving around this silly, heavy period. It's all gone. It's liberated. They're free. They've got their life back. They've got.
Oh, I mean, like, trust me. I'm sold. I know. You're speaking to the choir, because the thing with me is that even though I have, like, my quality of life has greatly improved since I've been able to change the way I eat and all of that. This has been a 5-year process. I continue to do it. I've not changed. Since I changed, I cut out all processed food, flour, dairy, meat, all of that from my diet. I've been reaping all of these benefits, but I still have my fibroids. So if I could do this procedure and get rid of my fibroids completely.
Yeah, now the fibroids, depending on the size of the fibroids may still be there.
Yeah.
But they're dead, because most women that have fibroids have no symptoms. The majority.
Right, I know that. Yeah.
Like probably
asymptomatic.
80% of women of color, adult women, have fibroids, and they don't all have symptoms. And if they don't have any symptoms, they don't need any treatment.
Right.
So what we want to do is we want to take a woman who's got significant fibroid symptoms, heavy bleeding, pelvic pain, urinary frequency, painful intercourse, what have you, and convert them into a woman that might have fibroids, but they're all dead. They don't bother her anymore. Now they're dead passengers that just ride along in the uterus.
Wow. I saw a question earlier talking about the cost. How does the cost compare to when you do the UFE in comparison to an actual surgical procedure, myomectomy or hysterectomy?
It's much less expensive because I do the procedure in my office here at the Atlanta Fibroid Center. It's not in a hospital. Hospitals charge,
right,
through the roof. So it's a less expensive procedure by far. Plus, the patients go home the same day.
Same day.
If you have a hysterectomy or a myomectomy, the patients are in the hospital. In fact, nobody wants to be in the hospital these days, let's face it, with all the COVID craziness. But,
exactly.
But they're in the hospital for several days, and then they have a 2-month recovery at home out of work. So the hospital bill is very expensive. They're in, the hospital. It's a surgical thing. It's much more expensive to have surgery, but where the additional benefit is, my patients are back to work in several days.
Maybe. That's what I was going to say. Yeah, you don't lose all of that time recovering, because when I was talking about my surgery, I was told to have at least 6 weeks to 2 months for surgery, so for recovery after the surgery. So would you like to tell me about a patient that you can think about that who was really, really suffering, and after they did the UFE, what their results were, just to kind of give us an idea of how much it actually improves the life of the patient?
It's transformational for the vast majority of patients. So a patient that I saw a while back, she was the typical patient that I see, like late 30s. She was like 38 or so, had a 15-week size uterus. So that means the uterus is enlarged up to her belly button and full of fibroids. And she went to her gynecologist, who said, you need a hysterectomy. And she was crushed by that, because she's like, I'm not mentally ready for surgery. That's it seems so final and abrupt. And he's like, oh, that's what you need. And she goes, is there anything else I could do? Anything? No. He told her no. And this was, she didn't mention anything about UFE, which unfortunately most gynecologists won't mention it, even though they're obligated to tell people all their options, not just the surgical ones. But
right.
And he said, I don't understand why you're reluctant. And she said, well, and she kind of hemmed and hawed, I might kind of be interested in, fertility and having a child. And he looked at her and he said, you're 38 and you're single. I think that ship has sailed. And she was like so crushed, devastated by this. It was so callous and uncaring.
Yes.
She was telling me this story as she's crying, and it's like, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to upset you. Let's just, I don't know if you'll get pregnant and have a child, but what I'm confident in is I can help you. I can, you know, these symptoms are horrible, the bleeding, the pain, the urinary frequency, waking up at night. Let's focus on getting you well, and then we'll just see what happens. So she underwent the UFE procedure. She did fine, recovered well. I saw her in follow-up. All the fibroids were dead. She was so happy, got her life back. She really felt great. She hadn't felt this great in a long time. And then she, not long after our follow-up exam, she met a man in church, amen. And then they started dating, and they ended up getting married.
Are you kidding?
Married, and then lo and behold, she got pregnant, and she had a child. And she sent me a baby picture, which I still have, and she sent me this picture with a little, you know, baby picture on it, and this really heartfelt, very pleasant note thanking me. And she said, you know, I was this close to getting a hysterectomy, and I wouldn't have had my miracle baby Jalen, and I'm so thrilled. And you know, wow.
I mean, wow.
But it got better, because so I kept the letter and I kept the little picture, and I show it at, you know, when I give talks around the country on fibroids and how you can have children after UFE. And so now fast forward, this is now, I don't know, about 6 months ago. There's a knock at the door, and my front office staff comes back and says, you know, there's a woman here to see you. And I'm like, oh, who is it? We're done seeing patients for the day, aren't we? And she said, yeah, we're done. I'm not sure. So I came out, and it was this woman was there. And she said, I don't know if you remember me. And I'm like, oh, of course, yes, I remember you, you know, and so forth. And she goes, I want to show you something. So we walked outside to the parking lot, and out of the car pops Jalen. He had just graduated high school, and he was driving.
Wow.
I want to show you something. We walked into the office, and I still have his picture up on the bulletin board, his baby picture.
Right.
He gave me his senior graduation picture, so now I have both.
Oh, wow.
In fact, I think, wait a minute, if you'll, 1 second. Okay. Okay, so I don't know if you can see.
I'm seeing it. Oh my gosh, that is so amazing.
That's high school graduate Jalen.
Right.
And then here's
the baby picture.
Here's some of our pictures.
Oh my gosh, that is so nice. That is such an awesome story. Wow.
Anyway, sorry, I don't want to make people dizzy.
Oh no, that was so worth it. Thank you so much for sharing that with us, because I mean, I'm looking at the comments right here. Well, let me just put it out there. Dr. Lippman, I have a conference that I do every October called Healthy Pelvis Conference. And even if I have to put it in an envelope and mail you here, you have to be in Jamaica in October. So put it in your calendar, the 31st of October. I need you at Healthy Pelvis Conference. We'll speak after and work out the details. Because this is exactly what happens. You come and you hear how, oh my gosh, you should hear some of the stories of how these women suffer every day. I spoke to a lady who she bleeds for 3 months at a time because of her fibroids. And she's anemic, she has blocked out a few times, and she just can't keep up because it is such an imposition on her life. And I'm talking to girls in high school who at the age of 17, they're telling me about massive clots, and they're losing so much blood all the time. And I keep on trying to encourage parents to get their girls checked out. So, and don't just accept the pain. It's something I wanted to talk a little bit about too, because I know when we look at cancer, we talk about early detection, but what about fibroids? Initially, when my fibroids were that, when my doctor saw my fibroids at the first, they're like, oh, they're small, you don't have to worry about it. But is there something that we can do before they get to the point where they become so intrusive in our lives and you know, have better quality of life overall?
Yeah, and that's where the stuff on the front end, the preventive stuff, the lifestyle, the healthy eating, the weight loss, all of those things on the front end, vitamin D.
Right.
Every year, when you get your well woman exam and checkup, make sure your vitamin D levels are adequate. All of these front end will pay dividends and be such that likely either you don't suffer with fibroids at all, or if you do, they're manageable. They don't get to the level where even you might not ever need me. That's fine.
Okay, awesome. All right, so let's talk about age. Now, I'm meeting girls younger and younger who are telling me about fibroid symptoms, even endometriosis symptoms. I did a school tour in November last year, and I met a high school senior who she just came back from having hysterectomy surgery. No, not hysterectomy, endometriosis surgery. And you know, at 17, which is pretty young.
Very young.
What can parents look for? Or what advice do you have for parents to help them be more vigilant and help their child not go through all of the pain before they get diagnosed? Because I get feedback all the time, especially from women who are diagnosed with endometriosis, that it took 10 years to get there. Like they thought it was all a lot of different things, or they'll just get painkillers, or the doctors just don't even test for that. So is there anything that we can do to help parents help their children when it comes to reproductive health issues?
Well, endometriosis is very difficult. Unfortunately, endometriosis is when the lining cells of the uterus, that's the endometrium, that's what sheds the period, when those cells are found completely outside of the uterus, that's endometriosis. And they behave if they were on the lining. They start bleeding. It's painful, as you mentioned. It's a very common cause of a really bad pelvic pain. And unfortunately, because it's outside of the uterus, I don't have anything that's of any value to provide those patients with endometriosis. However, there is a condition called adenomyosis, which is when the lining cells of the uterus plunge deeper the muscle of the uterus. In simple terms, you can think of adenomyosis as endometriosis that involves the uterus. Now, that I can treat adenomyosis very successfully with the same embolization procedure that we knock out fibroids for.
Really?
Yes. So if it's involving the uterus and not outside the uterus, then yes, we can help them with embolization. If it's a lot of involvement outside the uterus, unfortunately, I don't have anything to help them with.
Oh no, that is plenty helpful, because just based on the network that we have and just the conversations that I've had with women, adenomyosis, that is becoming, like, I met a lady this week who suffered from adenomyosis, and she is just at her wit's end. So she'll be ready to do some sort of procedure to fix it, because it really does wreak havoc on her life. And I know I see you don't address my October invitation, you know, but don't worry, I'll stalk you.
Yeah, there was a very famous actress, Gabrielle Union. I'm not sure if you.
Yes, I know Gabrielle Union.
She's married to an NBA All-Star.
Yeah, Dwayne Wade.
Yes, she suffered for many years, and no one could figure out why she was.
Yes.
And as it turns out, it was adenomyosis, and all these people, you know, these medical experts on TV here in the United States, you know, the famous doctors that you see on television, they were all telling her to get a hysterectomy, because adenomyosis, that's how you treat it. You can't cut it out like a fibroid. There's no myomectomy for adenomyosis. It's too diffuse. So they were telling him, well, just get a hysterectomy. And it's like, no, like, we could do embolization. And I even tried to message her on Instagram and Facebook. Of course, couldn't get through. But I don't know if she got a hysterectomy. I hope not. But, you know, we could have helped her, and that could have brought a lot of awareness to this. Of
course. Well, I heard about UFE because I followed another doctor who does the procedure. And that is how I started to read upon it. But it was a lot of medical jargon. It was very complicated. So when you explained it, you know, it sounded, everything made sense just now. But I really would love to have some sort of training, because I'm not aware that it is offered in Jamaica at all. And trust me, there is a lot of Jamaican women who wants to have this procedure. I'm talking to some of the gynecologists here, and even my gynecologist, he's telling me that they're doing 3 to 5 hysterectomies a week. Yeah, that's too much.
Hysterectomy is the second most common surgery done in the United States, which is crazy because half the population, men, don't even have a uterus. And the number one reason why we're doing hysterectomy by far is benign fibroids. So why are we, in a sense, amputating women of color over benign disease?
Exactly. I think and what I understood about hysterectomies before I started even looking into this is that is what you do when everything else don't work. It's the absolute last resort. Exactly. But now it's the first thing. As soon as they diagnose you, that's okay. So you want to have children? No. Okay, cut out your womb. Or you want to have children? Not sure. All right, add that one. Cut it out. So it is so. It's so easy.
It shouldn't be the first option. It should be, as you said, the option of last resort. And because the success of UFE in our hands is over 90%,
wow,
it's very likely that that's all you'll ever need ever again, particularly if you're embolized over, if you're 40 years of age and over, usually you can make it to menopause without needing anything else.
So, oh, wow. But does the size of the fibroid matter?
I'm sorry?
The size of the fibroid matter?
No, in fact, I just put out on our, if you go to our website, which is atlii.com, atlii.com. You'll see a blog post. The most recent one is the top 10 things gynecologists tell women that are absolutely wrong about fibroids. And one of them is you can't have a UFE if you're interested in fertility. That's false. If your fibroids are too big or too many, that's false. It doesn't matter how big or how many. As I mentioned, the fibroids are like the leaves of the tree. It doesn't matter if you have 1 leaf or 100. It'll knock them all out.
Yeah.
You're also
awesome.
Silliness, so if you're suffering with fibroids and your gynecologist tells you, well, I don't think you're a candidate, don't stop there. Get the second opinion from someone who's experienced in doing it. Gynecologists don't do this procedure. They're not experienced in it. They don't know how to counsel people. They're surgeons like to operate, and that's why it's so common. We got to stop.
Do surgery.
I don't do surgery. No surgery.
Okay, I absolutely. So what about, have you ever seen any situation where somebody, what's that? What am I looking at?
This is our hashtag campaign that we were doing.
Don't lose your you.
Because don't lose your you.
Oh, that makes sense. I love it.
This is the mayor of Atlanta, Georgia.
Yes.
And she
Lisa Lansbottom. Yes.
She might be the vice presidential candidate. We'll see.
Oh, she's amazing. I've been watching her. She's a firecracker. She's a firecracker. I've been watching her on with the whole COVID thing. She's really on top of things. I wanted to find out though, have you ever seen any case where after the procedure, after the UFE, that the fibroids grow back?
Very infrequently. That's why the 3-month follow-up with us is really important, because we want to make sure that all the fibroids are dead. They should be. If they're all dead and the woman is over 40, before she could ever grow any new ones, she'll be in menopause. So that's why I say it's typically a one and done. Now, occasionally, and again, this is not very common, there'll be women usually less than 40. They've gone like 10, 15, maybe 20 years, and they're still not menopausal. Say they were 30 or 35. Now they're in their late 40s, early 50s, and they've grown new ones. 2 of these is still way better than 1 surgery.
Oh, definitely. Absolutely. I mean, and just based on the fact that it is not so invasive, because the surgery alone, it really asks you to pause. And especially right now, a lot of women are entrepreneurs. So you have to stop earning for whatever period of time that you need to recover. So this helps in so many ways, because it's an outpatient procedure, and in a week you're up and running again. So I don't see a downside. What do you say you think has been challenges that persons have had, like Any bleeding, what kind of symptoms do they display after the surgery? Sorry, the procedure. I need to get surgery off my head.
Procedure, there is pain that they're recovering from. For usually that first day or two is kind of crampy, yucky, crampy. The fibroids are not happy that we've suffocated them, so there's pain involved, and it's variable.
Right.
People find it kind of annoying, heavy, crampy stuff. But after the first couple of days, they usually turn the corner. And I've had people, I don't recommend this, but I've had a number of people. We treated Cynthia Bailey from the Real Housewives. I don't know if you're familiar with her. She's a celebrity and supermodel.
Yeah.
She had the procedure on a Friday. She was back to work on Monday. Now, again, I don't recommend this, but a lot of women, particularly now with the COVID, they're at home doing work from home. And
Right.
a lot of people are working, on that third day after the procedure, they're working from home. So the recovery is pretty quick, much quicker than surgery. And I treated a woman this morning with UFE who was telling me, her uterus was above her belly button by a good amount above her belly button.
Right.
And they were telling her that the hysterectomy that they were recommending, basically because it's above the belly button, the normal incision is horizontal, which is, like a C-section from one hip to the other hip horizontally, which that's bad enough. But once it gets above the belly button, they were telling her they were going to cut her from her breastbone all the way down vertically to her hairline. And, so the surgery, you hear about robotic stuff and laparoscopic surgery, which is fine. It's still surgery. It's less than the open surgery. But most women with fibroids, their uteruses are too big to even consider robotic or laparoscopic surgery.
Right.
So they're getting open surgeries primarily. Most women are getting open surgeries. It's really unfortunate because, one of the other things that's really unfortunate about hysterectomy is they tell you about the surgical complications during surgery, but they often don't mention what happens to a woman when she loses her uterus psychologically.
That I knew about. I was terrified of that. Go right ahead into those details. That is what scared me straight. I heard about the after the hysterectomy, but I'll let you tell it.
Yeah, when you lose your uterus, it can affect you psychologically, like a man being castrated. There's a lot of sexual dysfunction after hysterectomy, loss of libido, loss of orgasm. And these women are, young women. The average age is 39, and we've seen a lot of 20s and 30s. So now these women, they can't have children. They all of a sudden, they've lost all interest in sexual relations. It's a disaster. And so this is another problem with hysterectomy. How old do you think this woman is? This is a commercial. This is an advertisement for adult diapers. You can see she's wearing.
That's a young woman.
Young woman, and I've got the woman. They have her, and they also have the corresponding woman of color wearing. She's trying to scooch on her skinny jeans over her adult diaper, and it says something, really cute, like they'll never know you're wearing a diaper. It's like, wait a minute, what does this 35, 40-year-old attractive woman need a diaper for? The reason this company that makes it, this is Depends. This is like Kimberly-Clark or Procter & Gamble, one of the big companies. They're not stupid. These are Madison Avenue marketers. They know their target is 35-year-old African-American women. Those are the women that are getting hysterectomies that are going to start leaking urine and need a diaper.
Yes. Oh my gosh. I didn't even think about that.
What are we doing? Why are we removing an organ that a woman was born with over benign disease? Cancer, yes, but fibroids are benign. Why in the world are we doing that? It shouldn't be done.
Oh my gosh, Dr. Littman, you are just, I feel like getting into spirit. No, because you're absolutely right. And the thing about it is that a lot of us just don't know. And we are told to just trust what it is. So I know women who have done the hysterectomy and they regret it because they didn't know that they could change their lifestyle, or they didn't know that these other procedures are available. And I didn't know at the time. My surgery date was set October 25th, 2015. my date was set. I was doing pre-op. I was ready to go. And it's just by talking to other women and by listening. A friend of mine, he put me on to his nutritionist, who is his thought process comes from a homeopathic space where he talks about balance and hormone balancing. So all of what you said about the lifestyle, that is what he said to me. And he broke it all down and he's like, you're not getting enough sleep. Your cortisol levels are too high. You need to get more vitamin D. He told me that. Yep. Right? And when I made all of those changes is when I started to see great improvement. But at the time when I was making decision about my surgery, I didn't know. So part of the issue that we have is just the information is not as mainstream. Because even UVS, I didn't know about this thing. I found out about it late last year, and it's just because of social media. I was following somebody who does the procedure, and I think it's somewhere in Atlanta, same way. And I saw them post something about it, and I went and I started to do some reading, and that's literally how I heard about it. I did not know that this procedure existed. Right, and I've been doing this procedure, say, for the past 25 years. This isn't anything new or experimental. 25 years I've been doing this, and you know, this is what we do every single day. We're leaders in this UFE procedure, supposedly have the largest experience in UFE in the United States. And so this is what we do every single day. And I meet people every day that have been told there's no other option but surgery, and that's just wrong. So the one take home from this is that no matter what your gynecologist tells you, if you're suffering with symptomatic fibroids and they tell you you have to have a hysterectomy, get a second opinion. You don't have to get a hysterectomy. Oh, wow. Thank you so much for that. And I would like to seriously talk to you about coming to Jamaica, because I really do think that is a conversation that a lot of our gynecologists needs to be a part of. And I'm not quite sure how the training part of it goes, but to my knowledge, it's not being offered here. I'm definitely going to do some research on that. But I would at least like to see more persons even seeing this as an option, because there are a lot of men. I see some men joining the live right now, which I wanted to talk to the men for a second and just address how painful intercourse affects the woman, and how what can they do to help her even get to the space where she can get some kind of treatment. Because remember, you know, from where girls we are taught that our periods are private and we need to keep it to ourselves. So a lot of us suffer in silence, and we wouldn't dare say to our partners that I feel a lot of pain during sex with you, so that's why I don't want to do it as often. How can we change that? Well, we've got to improve the communication, clearly. I mean, and I love it when men are in the audience when I speak. Say I go out and speak all over the country on fibroids, and it's usually women. But when we have men in the audience, that's really helpful, because there is a breakdown in communication. Women often keep it private and they don't discuss this. And we saw this play out. Again, I'll bring up Cynthia Bailey from the Real Housewives. She was so brave to tell her story, and it was so great of her, because she was struggling in her marriage. They almost got a divorce during the show, when she was suffering with fibroids, because she was having these horrible periods and she was very tired and weak, and she just wasn't available for relations because of, you know, she didn't feel very sexual, because if you're wearing a diaper to catch the clots in, you don't feel sexual, and you're bleeding all the time. That's not sexual. And you're anemic, so you're tired and weak from that. And let's face it, sex is exercise. So for all those reasons, she was avoiding relations with her husband. Now, from his aspect, from his perspective, all he knew is, in a sense, he wasn't getting his. He thought Cynthia didn't love him anymore. That couldn't be farther from the truth. So they were drifting apart until he realized, you know, and she came in the office and they were together, and we talked about it. Like, she loves you dearly, but this is what she's going through every month. And when he realized all the gear and pads and all the things she had to wear and all the going through and flooding and gushing, and
when he started to realize what she was going through, all of a sudden they connected. And once she had the UFE and she got transformed, she got her life back. And as she told me, I gave her sexy back. So that was something great. And it was phenomenal. They were transformed together. So the more communication, if men can understand exactly the horrors and what their women are going through, they can understand.
Yes.
It's not that they don't want to have sex. It's either painful or they're weak and tired and don't feel very sexual.
You don't. You absolutely don't. I experienced that. Like I went through the painful intercourse, and I went through the not feeling very sexual, and I just wasn't up to it. And I'm generally a very sexual person. I love my orgasms. So, you know, when I got to that point, I realized that something was actually wrong. But it wasn't until I flooded out a taxi, which I wrote all about this in my book. Dr. Lehman, I'm going to send you a copy of my book.
Oh, great.
I wrote all about it in my book. And I spoke about how I came out of this gentleman's car, and when I got up onto the seat looked like they killed a small animal on it. I bled right through. So I really do want men to be a part of this conversation, because I want them to understand that even though you enjoy our bodies, even though we can have fun together, there are a lot of things that we go through, and we really do have to, we need your support, and we need you to be there for us, and we need you to help us solve some of these issues, because it's a lot, and it affects how we feel even about ourselves on a self-esteem point of view.
Absolutely. Very important.
Oh my gosh, Dr. Lehman, thank you so much. This has been so eye-opening. I'm seeing some of the comments. Ladies and gentlemen, if you have any questions, now is the time to ask. Tell the website information again. Tell us the website again that they can go to.
The website is atlii.com, and Instagram is dr_ my last name. You can see that, LIPMAN. And we'd be happy to answer any questions patients have, and we'd be happy to help them. We see a number of patients from well outside of Atlanta, even other countries. When traveling was, you know, before the COVID stuff, with a lot of people, because Atlanta, you can fly Delta nonstop to pretty much anywhere. And so we would see a lot of people traveling to Atlanta for our expertise, but we're happy to even talk remotely, email, call my office phone number. I can give that, 770-953-2600. I'm happy to give my email or talk to people privately if sometimes they don't want to talk in front of other people about this. It's embarrassing. We get that. I'm happy to help in any way I can.
Absolutely. And thank you so much for making the time to talk to us today, because I'm sure you're very, very busy. And just a little bit of part in your business. How's everything been for you with the COVID crisis going on? I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of adjustments that you're making in your practice. What's that like for you?
Yeah, we're vastly reducing the number of appointments. So we're seeing patients only one at a time. If you can imagine being in a doctor's office one at a time. We're doing a lot of teleconsults like this with a secure, we have a secure telemedicine portal where I can see patients remotely. They can be at home on a desktop or a laptop, and we can go over their imaging remotely. We can talk about their symptoms. And the day of the procedure, everybody has their own private room in the center, and they're the only ones in that room for the entire visit. So we're doing a lower volume of people, and we're social distancing. Everybody's wearing masks.
Right.
Doing all the things that we can do. Yes, it's definitely, you know, it's a lower volume thing, but people still need to be treated. And fortunately, this is not a hospital, so there are no COVID positive patients in the building or anything. So it's a much more pleasant, personal environment. This center was designed specifically for women, because that's who we serve. We serve women, particularly women of color.
Right. Okay, that's awesome. All right, and I'm just looking to see if anybody have any additional questions. As a part Somebody says frequent urination a symptom of having fibroids. Yes, it is.
Yes, very common symptom. And oftentimes, you know, it's not recognized due to fibroids. They'll have urinary frequency, waking up at night, and they'll go to their doctor, and their doctor will run their urine test, and they'll say, well, you don't have a urinary infection. I don't know what to do with you. It's like, no, it's not a urine. We know that. It's because there's a big fibroid compressing the blood
up against the bladder
like a paperweight. And so they'll go more commonly. The bladder doesn't, the fibroid won't let the bladder fill appropriately.
Right.
So common, they wake up at night, but once they get the UFE procedure, that goes away completely.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Littman. You have absolutely opened our eyes to a lot of things. I'm going to be talking to you more about coming to Jamaica in October. If you will just indulge me one more time and give us the number again, because I want to post that information when we do the wrap up.
So our website again is atlii.com, atlii.com, and our phone number is 770-953-2600.
Okay, awesome, got it.